Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Kneon, and things are going to get worse for comic book and video game journos. The money is running out. And I hate to be that guy who says, I told you so, but I totally told you so. I did. Earlier this year, I said that the venture capital was going to run out, and a lot of these websites are going to shut down. They're not going to be able to afford to stay in business because the advertising is drying up. A lot of these websites were never financially viable, and they were way overpaying their journalists. And a lot of advertisers aren't advertising on them anymore because a lot of the traffic was inflated. Most of these websites, sites like BuzzFeed and Vice, they were propped up with venture capital. It's all running out, guys, which means that there are going to be a lot of unemployed, salty journalists out there. And I think this is part of the reason that we're seeing journos double, triple down in recent weeks, going after YouTubers, going after podcasters, going after people who have platforms on, sites like X or Facebook or whatever, because they're being replaced. They're being replaced by just everyday people who really like the stuff that they talk about, and they're knowledgeable about the stuff that they talk about, whether or not that's video games or comic books or movies or whatever. The reason they come after people like us, okay, is that we're basically doing it, but we're doing it outside of the system, the venture capital-backed, studio-backed system, and they cannot stand it. So we're going to talk about this. Before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture, news, views, and rants, guys. No woohoos in this video. Geeky will be back in later videos. Today, she's kind of busy this morning. Lots of Christmas stuff going on. So she's trying to get some of that done. But let's go out to this article on the New York Times. And I saw this a couple days ago. And this is really what kicked off this video, was that, yeah, the money is running out. The money is running out. So many media layoffs this year. Vice is getting rid of one of their CEOs. Vice Media imploding. Again, they're running out of venture capital. We've been following the situation with Vice. They're shutting down a lot of their TV shows and laying people off. They've laid off all their gaming journos, I believe. And that is one area that's been hit particularly hard, is video game journalism. And everybody's like, why is this happening? Why are all these video game jobs drying up? Because you had 5 to 10 years of free money. And now you have to turn a profit. A lot of these jobs, these were luxury items. Pop culture journalism, video game journalism, usually propped up by some kind of a parent company, whether it's like a media conglomerate or a video game publisher or a Hollywood studio. In the case of like Nerdist, they are propping up these publications, and most of them use some venture capital. And that's running out. So this is, again, coming from the New York Times. From unicorns to zombies, tech startups run out of time and money after staving off collapse by cutting costs. Many young tech companies are out of options, fueling a cash bonfire. They talk about WeWork. That is one of the most infamous cases that they finally filed for bankruptcy. I'm shocked it took them this long. For those of you who don't know the story behind WeWork, there's a whole documentary. I think there's a whole series about it now, but I saw the documentary, and it was like everything that's wrong with Silicon Valley all in one place. Like, you really have to watch at least the documentary to get a feel for how much disregard there was for profit and how much disregard there was for, just watching your expenses. And ultimately, there's a lot of disregard for the employees too. It was basically a cult-like environment where they just burned money, piles and piles of money. And the end game was always to trick investors into giving you more money, and it's all collapsing. They're talking about some other tech companies that are failing. They said, as an industry, we should all be braced to hear about a lot more failures. This is Jenny Lefcourt from Freestyle Capital. The more people got before the party ended, the longer the hangover. Getting a full picture of the losses is difficult since private tech companies are not required to disclose when they go out of business or sell. The industry's gloom has also been masked by a boom in companies focused on AI, which has attracted hype and funding over the last year. So yeah, how this works is you basically come up with an idea, no matter how stupid it is, and then you talk stupid rich people into giving you money to fund this idea, and you basically live off of funding for years. Usually 5 to 10 years. So a lot of these digital media outlets that are imploding now, they've been living off of free money for years. Now you got to pay the piper. Now they're all going out of business. Approximately 3,200 private venture-backed U.S. companies have gone out of business this year, according to data compiled for the New York Times by PitchBook, which tracks startups. Those companies had raised $27.2 billion in venture funding. PitchBook said the data was not comprehensive and probably undercounts the total because many companies go out of business quietly. It also excludes many of the largest failures that went public, such as WeWork. So this is not good. Carta, a company that provides financial services for many Silicon Valley startups, said 87 of the startups on its platform that had raised at least $10 million had shut down this year. This year had been the most difficult year for startups in at least a decade. Venture investors say that failure is normal and that for every company that goes out of business, there's an outsized success like Facebook or Google. Yes, it happens like once a decade. As many companies that have languished for years now show signs of collapse, investors expect the losses to be more drastic because of how much cash was invested over the last decade. So this is very important. This is basically peak video game journalism, peak pop culture journalism, because it was the luxury item. From 2012 to 2022, investment in private U.S. startups ballooned eightfold to $344 billion. The flood of money was driven by low interest rates and successes in social media and mobile apps, propelling venture capital from a cottage financial industry that operated largely on one road in Silicon Valley, in a Silicon Valley town, to a formidable global asset class akin to a hedge fund or private equity. During that period, venture capitalist investing became trendy. Even 7-Eleven and Sesame Street launched venture funds, and the number of private unicorn companies worth $1 billion or more exploded from a few dozen to more than 1,000. But the advertising profits gushing from the likes of Facebook and Google proved elusive for the next wave of startups, which have tried untested business models like gig work, the metaverse, micromobility, and cryptocurrency. Now, this is, again, talking more about tech companies, but it is all intertwined because companies like Vice were never really sustainable. Companies like BuzzFeed went public and they got destroyed because we saw how little these media companies are actually worth. And digital media companies were being traded, like commodities. They were trading them. But so many people have lost their shirts on digital media over the last several years. In fact, look at what happened with Jezebel. That was part of Geo Media. They tried to sell it. They couldn't find a buyer. And then after they shut the site down, they eventually found a buyer for it. But I'm sure it went for dirt cheap. And the reason being, it's very, very hard to monetize blogs now. In fact, Google just had a huge algorithm change in the last couple of weeks, and people's traffic it's been decimated. And they're using AI to basically scrape news articles and compile them into little news snippets. So when people are searching for news, they might not even go to your site. Google might take the news off of your site or maybe make a composite paragraph off of your site and some other sites, but they're not actually going to go to your site. And then if they go to your site, they have their ad blockers turned on anyway. So it doesn't do you any good, does it? It's not sustainable. And they were paying these journalists like $100,000 plus a year to write about video games, to write about, comics culture, all this stuff that just is, it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. And they know it's not worth it because people are going to get their news and their reviews from people that actually play video games, actually read and buy comic books. Not these people that want to use the platform to spout off about activism and use it as a stepping stone to get into like quote unquote real journalism, which is what a lot of these people wanted to do, right? So a lot of companies are choosing to shut down before they run out of cash, returning what remains to investors. Others are stuck in zombie mode, surviving but unable to grow. They can muddle along like that for years, investors say, but will most likely struggle to raise more money. So yeah, once the money runs out, they either have to shut it down, sell it off, and who are they going to sell it to? You know, here, buy my failing company that has zero future. You know, we can't turn a profit. We've been in business for 5 or 10 years. We can't turn a profit. And that's why so many of these websites can't find buyers. Even Geo Media, they bought up the rest of the Gawker sites, and that was when things were better, substantially better than they are now. And it took them years. It was, I think Univision bought them. It took them years to sell those websites because it was a money losing proposition. The amount of money it takes to staff them, to host them, to probably, pay to promote the articles, and then then you have to have, salespeople out there because you have to do direct ad buys, and you got to have, people that maintain the site, social media, and all that stuff. It's a huge investment. It's a huge investment. Meanwhile, individual bloggers can make more profit themselves. Individual YouTubers can make more profit themselves because they don't have a lot of overhead. You just sit in your basement and talk about video games and comic books, and Google takes care of the rest. Yeah, they take half your money, but that's still cheaper than having to host and maintain everything yourself, right? Then what's sick about this is so many of these startups are shutting down and they're already looking at starting their next company. So they're just going to go waste more money. So yeah, Vice Media, going back to Vice, their co-CEO resigned, and now they've got one CEO. And this comes after the company. I can't pronounce his last name. I'm sorry. It's Lakhandwalas. Exit comes after the company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in July 2023. They closed a $350 million sale to a group of former lenders, Fortress Investment Group, Soros Fund Management, and Monroe Capital. Last month, Vice announced another round of layoffs, and now they're getting rid of one of their CEOs. They said Vice Media most recently had just over 1,000 staffers worldwide. At one point, counted about 3,000. They were supposedly worth billions. And now they're not, guys. And we're going to see a lot of these digital media outlets just shut down because it's better to just take the L. It's better to take the write-off, than it is to keep paying journalists to spout off about activist talking points and basically alienate your audience and alienate your customers, meaning advertisers. Because a lot of times, look at what happened with Kotaku. They got blacklisted by Nintendo because their journos were out there making shitty comments. So Nintendo's not going to advertise directly. Nintendo's not going to give them a sneak peek at anything. They're not going to give them review copies because their journos wouldn't keep their mouths shut. Because, again, you don't really have to behave yourselves when there's lots of free money. And the free money is running out, guys. The free money is running out, and what we're going to see is a massive, massive course correction, and we're going to see more citizen journalists, I guess, in the geek space like it used to be. Kind of like it used to be. You're going to basically have the digital equivalent of zines, and that's where things are going to go. And some people are going to be able to make livings off of it. A lot of people aren't. But, the days of going to college and getting a degree and getting a 6-figure job working as a video game journalist or a pop culture journalist, those days are over. If you can do it, but you're going to have to do it yourself. So I'm going to wrap this one up. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. We'll talk later.